Hello and welcome to the Power Amp video interview series. I'm here today with Jeremy Arts, Vehicle Restraint Product Manager. As you guys can see, we are still wearing our masks. Our mask mandate has not been lifted at our Germantown facility. And today we're going through a very interesting topic, deciding which restraint is best for your application. And by doing this, we're going through our Power Amp Vehicle Restraint application flowchart. This will be available in the description of the video. So be sure to click that and follow along as we go through. We're not going to go word for word, but you'll be able to track our progress through the video itself. Jeremy, let's just start off right away. What are the first two questions people usually ask when trying to purchase a vehicle restraint?
Good question, Casey. Well, so the first two things you'll typically, and you can follow along with this once you've downloaded from the description, but usually you're going to wonder to yourself, well, where do I want this thing to be placed? What's the location of my restraint going to be? And then the other thing is, too, what kind of restraint operation do I want? Okay, so the first one you'll probably talk about, that you should think about is the location of the restraint. So, you'll ask, do you want a restraint that makes it easy to remove snow and debris and things from the drive approach and allows any type of truck or trailer to back in and be serviced, regardless of if it has a rear impact guard or a lift gate or anything else, okay? And in that situation, if you answer yes to that question, you want those capabilities, you're going to want a restraint that lives inside the dock, in the pit, under the leveler. That's an under leveler style restraint. And for power amp vehicle restraints, that's going to take you down to the power hook, okay? And the power hook is a fantastic restraint, okay? So if you answered no to that question about you want to have it really easy, nothing on the outside of the dock face to interfere with removing snow and debris and things, and you're not concerned about having the versatility to be able to service trucks that back into the dock with a lift gate or anything. If you answer no to that question, then you can have an externally mounted restraint, and that'll take you over to the question about, well, then in that case, what kind of operation do you want, right? And then the next question you'll ask with operation then is, what style do you want? Do you want manually activated restraint, or do you want an automatic push button activated restraint? So if you answered to that question, you answer that you want a manually activated restraint. Maybe you're trying to keep costs down. Usually manually activated restraints are less expensive. Then you need to ask the next question, do you want the inside and outside lights that'll come with the restraint? Do you want those to change automatically when the restraint is engaged, or do you want the dock operator to have to manually change those on the light controls? Well, if you answer yes, and honestly that is the best answer, is yes, the lights change automatically, that is the best option. That's going to take you down to the PowerStop MAL. And the MAL is a manually activated version of PowerStop with automatic lights, AL. Okay? If you answer no to that question, right, you don't really care to have the automatic lights, maybe you're doing additional cost-saving measures, which is a manual light package. It's not the best option for safety or convenience, but that would take you down to the PowerStop MML, which is the manually activated restraint with manually activated lights. Those lights have to be changed manually by the dock operator, themselves.
And Jeremy, what are some of the benefits of having a push button activation?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, if you have a restraint that is push button activated, it is far easier for the dock worker to use that restraint, and that right there alone makes them more likely to use it appropriately. Okay, so when you're asking yourself the question of what style of operation do you want, manual or push button, I talked about the manual, but now that's a great way to bring up the push button option. Okay, so if you're interested in that, having a push button automatic restraint, you have to ask yourself another question after that says, what about your drive approach? Okay, because what your drive approach looks like makes all the difference as to what kind of restraint you're going to have and where it's going to be installed. Okay, so there's three different ways. The three different ways you can look at your drive and ask yourself questions about. Is your drive an incline approach? Is it a level or a decline approach of less than 5%? Or is it a decline of 5% or greater? These are three different possibilities that any one of which might apply to your drive. And if you are curious about it, ask your distributor, because your distributor they'll find that out. They're going to come and check out your docks. They'll be able to take those measurements, and they'll be able to tell you that if you don't already know what your dock approach looks like as far as the slope and all that. Okay. But let's start with if it's an incline approach. So if it's an incline approach, that means that your approach slopes up toward your dock, okay? And that means that trailers are more likely generally to want to roll away from the dock, okay? So you have to ask yourself then, if you want a restraint that holds the trailer tight against the dock, okay, preventing running room or trailer creep or head start room, whatever you want to call it, and maximizing the amount, keeping as much of that leveler lip in the back of the trailer as possible. And a lot of customers might be really interested in keeping as much of that leveler lip in the back of the trailer as possible, especially if they've, maybe they've had a near miss or an accident, and they really want to avoid any kind of trailer creep, or they want to always keep as much leveler in that truck as possible. So that's the case there. And if the answer is yes to that question, they want that. They want an active hold. They want a restraint that holds the trailer tight against the dock. If the answer is yes, that's going to take them right down to power hook again. Okay, so that's an advantage of the power hook. It's an active engagement restraint. If you answer no to that question, then you're going to follow the spreadsheet to the next question of, excuse me, does your dock wall have at least 8 inches of solid concrete? This is a big deal because this is going to help decide which restraint options might be best for your particular situation. Okay, so if your dock wall has at least 8 inches of solid concrete, if the answer to that question is yes, that's going to lead you down to the next question of, do your docks get intermodal trailers, container trailers, which have cover plates in the rear impact guards, or do you want to avoid rig wedge, where you get a lot of trailer creep or early departure, and the truck sometimes gets stuck on the hook, and then it takes a while to find out what the problem is. They got to back the trailer up against the dock, and then you can finally release the hook and let the trailer go. It can take 5 to 10 minutes. It actually happens in docks all over the country every day. If you want to avoid that, okay, so you're going to answer yes to that question, that's going to take you down to the TPR Unilock, which solves both those problems. It can safely restrain intermodal container trailers, which most rotating hooks can't, and it also solves the problem of rig wedge automatically. Now, if you answered no to that question about intermodal container trailers and rig wedge, then the TPR, the standard power amp rotating hook, is going to be okay. But the Unilock is just an upgrade over it. It does everything the TPR does, including these 2 additional features. And to be honest, many times you won't know for sure if your docks will ever not see intermodal container trailers, right? So a lot of customers do like the Unilock for that flexibility, that option. They don't have to worry if they start getting a bunch of container trailers and their rotating hooks aren't Unilocks, they might have a challenging time restraining those trailers safely. With the Unilock, they don't have to worry about that. Any kind of those trailers that come in with any kind of rear impact guard, it'll restrain those, okay? So then going, back up to the question about dock wall having at least 8 inches of solid concrete, poured concrete. We went through yes, okay, and the answer is yes to those questions, takes you down to the Unilock or TPR. But if you answer no, then you have to ask yourself about your drive approach, right? You have to ask yourself, does your drive approach have at least 8 inches of solid concrete? Now, if the answer is yes, you're going to have a Z bracket in place, because you can't install a rotating hook restraint on the ground without that Z bracket. Okay, it's going to mount in 2 different positions. You're going to have to do some welding. You have to have you've got concrete in the drive, so you can install it that way. But then after that, as long as you know you've got concrete there, you're going to have a Z bracket, but you can have TPR Unilock then. Okay. So if you answered no to that question, you don't have solid concrete anywhere. You don't have solid concrete on your dock wall. You don't have solid concrete on your drive. You're going to have to pour a concrete pad, and you're still going to need a Z bracket. But then you can install a Unilock or a TPR.
And for that concrete, most wall-mounted restraints are going to need that 8 inches, correct? So there's no getting around it.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, if you're gonna have generally a safe mounting situation for really any kind of vehicle restraint, you're going to need at least 8 inches of solid poured concrete. Now, on a dock wall mounted, typically rotating hook restraints are mounted to the dock face, and that is the most common style of restraint out there in the market today. So I would assume, logically speaking, there are a lot of dock walls that are a minimum 8 inches solid concrete, poured concrete. A lot of them are going to have rebar in it, so it might be a little bit more of a pain to do those installs. But I've been told that it's not typically a a difficult thing to do compared to other things that have to be done in loading docks. So I really think that it's not a major issue. So as long as you have solid concrete at the dock wall, that the rotating hook is a great option. Good question, Casey.
Yeah. So going back up to the drive approach, what happens when your decline is closer to being level?
Yeah, that's a great one. So if you have a level approach or a decline of less than 5%, so then you're going to be asking yourself, if you want a dock wall mounted restraint that stores up off the ground for easier cleaning and snow removal. Okay, so if the answer is yes, that's going to lead you back over to, does your dock wall have at least 8 inches of solid concrete? And then you're on the track that's going to take you to either the TPR or the Unilock.
Yep.
If you answer no to that question, if you want a dock wall mounted restraint that stores up off the ground, you answer no to that, it's not really a concern of yours. That means that it's possible that a ground mounted restraint will be okay. So ask yourself if your drive approach or your dock wall has at least 8 inches of solid concrete. If the answer is yes, either one of those, you have solid concrete somewhere, either on the ground in front of the dock or the dock wall itself. You answered yes, you're at the Power Stop AAL. Okay, that's great. It's a great restraint. It's considered our base model restraint, but it's not because it's less effective. It still has a ton of steel in it. It's just our base level vertical barrier restraint. It has a lot of the same features that the other ones do. It just costs us a little less to make it. So it's a great product, and it's typically going to vertical barrier restraints are typically going to cost a little bit less than other types of restraints like rotating hooks.
Yeah.
That's typical. So if you answer no to that question, you don't have any kind of poured concrete. All right, you're going to have to pour a concrete pad in the drive. And then you're going right back to Power Stop AAL, and you can install that on the drive. So if you have a decline of 5% or more, right? So that's the only one left we've got to talk about, and that could be your situation too. Does your dock wall have at least 8 inches of solid concrete? So once again, you're right back down into that one. Okay. So it seems to me like that's a pretty critical question. But once you've answered that, it takes you right down to either the TPR or Unilock. So that's about it. And Casey, do you have anything else you want to discuss?
Yeah, again, if you guys didn't download the PDF of our flowchart, be sure to download that in the video description. Or if you found this video on social media, be sure to download it off the post as well. Jeremy, thanks again for coming by. I mean, lots of great insights as always. And for more information on all of our Power Amp vehicle restraints, be sure to check out www.poweramp.com or contact a regional representative today. Thank you very much.
Take care.